Scope creep and renegotiating. I used to hate having to renegotiate with my clients. Every time I had to do it, I'd get this adrenaline spike, my body would get in fight or flight mode, and I'd feel all freaked out and shaky. It was not fun. But after 13 years in the industry and after more renegotiations than I can possibly count, I've created a process that protects me and my team from getting exploited, all while protecting and preserving my relationship with my clients. In this episode, we are talking about scope creep survival and how to renegotiate without losing your client or getting exploited. I'm pulling back the curtain on my most powerful renegotiation tactics, the same one I've used to protect my business for years, and I'm going to give you a proven framework that you can follow whenever your client tries to change things up on you and you have to renegotiate your agreement. Welcome to the Event Secrets Podcast, where we talk about how to put on better events, take better care of our clients, and make a whole lot more money in the process. This is an all-action, no fluff podcast full of actionable insights created specifically for event professionals. There are a lot of reasons that you might need to renegotiate an agreement with the client in the event industry. They might change timelines on you, they might add or subtract deliverables, they might change your setup time, something like that. They might ask for some insurance requirement that they didn't specify before you quoted everything out. Heck, they might even make you jump through some insanely complicated vendor hoops. You might run into weather issues or venue problems, or heck, you might even have the entire venue change at the last moment, or maybe the client postpones on you or cancels altogether. And let's be real, some clients can also just be a total pain in the ass to work with. My friends in the wedding space, you definitely know what I'm talking about on this one, right? Our team at Balloon Artisan creates really cool balloon arches and installations and all that good stuff in pretty much every major metro area in the country. Last year alone, we did 1,008 events, which is crazy. That's an insane amount of events. And we've seen just about every change or curveball thrown at us that you can possibly imagine. Last year, we even had a situation where someone hired us to decorate their mega yacht, and it turns out that the ocean tide got lower than, I guess, the tide forecast anticipated, and they couldn't even get the yacht into the harbor. And so our team had to sit out there for 6 hours waiting at the dock for the ocean to lift enough for this stupid mega yacht to get into the harbor. And when all was said and done, the client didn't even want to compensate that for that time that we had spent waiting. And it was super frustrating. So any number of things can cause us to need to renegotiate with our clients for more payment or whatever it is, right? Of course, our client, they're not usually out there trying to complicate our lives or make things miserable for us. A lot of the times they just don't understand the impact that their requests to make changes to the project can have on our team. They don't understand the extra bandwidth or maybe materials or timing or whatever logistical complexities that you might deal with. They don't understand what's taken to make what might seem like a rather small change to them. And that's exactly why it's on us as event professionals to learn how to communicate expectations properly and to learn best tactics for renegotiating so we can guide them through the process and make sure that we have a great and strong working relationship with that client for hopefully years to come. And that's why it's on us as event professionals to learn how to manage these situations proactively, to learn how to renegotiate and how to set clear expectations and communicate those so the client understands them. And that way we can really strengthen and preserve that client relationship while being treated fairly and not getting exploited as event professionals. And to make things even trickier, renegotiating in the event space is different from renegotiating in any other industry. Because once the event is over, there are no do-overs. You cannot roll back the clock, right? It's not like the client can, take a physical product to the store and just get a refund for it and the store can take it back. And of course, you can't get your time back either. So the time that you invested in that event, it's gone forever. And that makes renegotiation really important and also a little bit more challenging than in a lot of other industries. All right, so let's get to the good stuff. To give you a little bit of a roadmap, by the way, remember, my art is for sale. I had so much success with my buckets in the last podcast. I'm like, hey, let's try it again, right? So to give you a little bit of the roadmap, we're going to talk about core principles of renegotiation, some of those important fundamental concepts that you need to understand if you want to renegotiate successfully. Then we're going to move on to talking about preventative renegotiation. So we can keep problems from occurring in the first place, and so things are smooth from the get-go. Then we talk about reactive renegotiation, which is when things start to change on you mid-project and you need to kind of, bring things under control again. And then you have the shit hits the fan scenario where everything's gone sideways, people are upset, emotions are high, things are crazy, and we need to really rein things back in quick before something catastrophic happens. So we're going to talk about each of these 4 areas right here, and we're going to start by talking with the core principles. The first principle we need to talk about is that you and your client are on the same team. You both have the same goal. You want the event to turn out absolutely spectacularly, and you want everything to be as smooth as possible as well. So you're on the same team. Make sure you're not thinking of your client as an adversary. Don't think of them as the enemy. And they shouldn't think of you as the enemy either. And if they do think of you as the enemy, which happens sometimes, it's your job as the event professional to be like, hey, whoa. Like, remember, we're on the same team. I want this just as bad as you because my goal is to work together for years to come. And if I don't really knock this out of the park and do an amazing job this first go, you're never going to hire me again. And that would make me sad. So I'm really committed to making your event awesome. The next thing is put yourself in your client's shoes when it comes time to renegotiate. I once had a friend in the event space that came to me and was telling me about a situation they had with a client, and they're super upset about this client. They're like, can you believe how ridiculous they are and how mean they've been to me, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, well, tell me about the situation that happened. And so they told me about the situation, and I was like, hey, I gotta be honest with you. I would hate you too if you said that to me or if you treated me that way. And the event professional was so wrapped up in their needs and what they wanted from the project that they didn't even take time to put themselves in their client's shoes and see how the client might be feeling. And it was backfiring really hard. So remember, a little bit of empathy can go a long way when it comes to renegotiating or adjusting, some sort of agreement that you have with your client. A really important principle to remember in the event space in particular is that you might be dealing with middle people. You might not be dealing with the final decision maker. This is super common with all the different planners and coordinators and event managers and all that good stuff. Especially at Balloon Artisan, our team's almost never working with the end decision maker. We always have some sort of intermediary. Now, when things need to be renegotiated or when expectations need to be managed or communicated or whatever, we need to work through this middle person to reach the decision maker to get the final sign off or whatever it is, right? Now, this can be tricky because most times the middle person is not as good at explaining the situation as what my team would be, right? We do this all day, every day. They don't. What we usually try to do in this case is we will coach the middle person on what to say to the decision maker. Or if possible, we'll just write up an email and say, hey, can you forward this on to, the powers that be? And then they'll forward it on, and the powers that be can hear our perspective on the matter rather than relying on a game of telephone where the middle person may or may not get it right. Now, this has been really important for us at Balloon Artisan because if a middle person has to communicate why the budget needs to be doubled over what was originally planned, we might actually lose the sale because their sales abilities might not be that great and their motivation to get that budget approved also might not be that great because they're coming from a different place than where we are. Where with us, we're really good at communicating like, hey, you can spend $1,000 and get something like, it's nice. Or you can spend like $3,000 and get something that's like, wow. So do you want the wow or do you want the, that's nice? Another important factor to consider, especially in regards to middle people, is the ego. Egos play a huge role in the event space. Everybody wants to feel understood, they want to feel competent and like they're treated fairly and professional and all that good stuff. But with middle people in particular, there's something that they're usually trying to portray to the powers that be, right? So they might want to show their boss that, wow, I'm really competent and you don't need to micromanage me. I can do this on my own, or you can count on me. Or they might want their team to be super impressed, or maybe their clients, they want their clients to be like, wow, this is the best event I've ever been to. It could be any number of things, but the human ego plays a really big role. Now, I'm not saying you need to suck up to your client or brown nose or anything like that, but if you remember that your client or the middle person or whoever you're interacting with wants to be treated a certain way so they can be perceived a certain way, you can help them with that goal. So for example, if we're dealing with an executive admin and they're the ones coordinating with us, we can say, hey, one of the best things about working with us is we're going to get everything done. We can even get it done in the next hour if you want. So you don't have to keep going back to your boss and bothering your boss with questions and things like that and making you look less credible and less capable of handling things on your own. We're going to make you look like a rock star. And your boss is absolutely going to love how good of a job you did handling everything, right? We're appealing to that sense of their ego. We're trying to help them be perceived in the way that they want to be perceived. When it comes to renegotiating and creating a healthy client relationship, remember that people connect with people, not with policy or corporations. And so contracts are very important, but what's more important than the contract is the person, is that relationship, that human connection. Because if they feel connected to you and they feel like you have their best interest at heart, then they will be more willing to work with you. Make sure that you don't hide behind policy or rules or regulations or whatever, because ultimately it's going to make the relationship feel a bit more cold and it's going to undermine your credibility as an event professional. Next, people will go to bat for you if they see that you're willing to go to bat for them. Really make sure that you have their back, that you're willing to go the extra mile to help them achieve their event goals, whatever those might be, and they will reward you for that. And it will make things a lot easier when it comes to renegotiating. Also, make sure to let them know, like, hey, I'm not just in it for this one event. I want to create a lifetime relationship with you so we can keep working together for years to come. And from a business standpoint, like in our case at Balloon Artisan, we don't usually make a whole lot of money our first time working with a client. And so we really want to make sure that we impress them that first time so they'll keep coming back and working with us. That's why we have clients that have done over 30 projects with us in just a couple of years. Like, it's insane how many clients we have that keep coming back to us. And those are the clients that allow Balloon Artisan to grow and pay our team well and all that stuff. It's not the onesie twosies events. We want to keep working with people for a lifetime. Moving on, people really respect extreme ownership. So if something ever goes wrong and it's your fault, own up to it. Clarify what went wrong. Tell them how you're going to fix it and promise them that it's never going to happen again, and make sure it does not happen again. A lot of times, our best client relationships have come from situations like misunderstandings or miscommunications where we're like, hey, sorry that this wasn't communicated clearly. That's totally on me. I understand if you hate me, but I want to fix it. A lot of times we found that our best clients come out of those situations because they're like, wow, these are real people, they make mistakes. But if they make mistakes and when they make mistakes, they will fix them and they will have my back, right? They'll go to bat for me. The last core principle we're going to talk about is that only one person can be in the angry boat at any given time. A mentor of mine and one of my favorite people, his name's Alex Hermosi, he talks about this concept of the angry boat. And he talks about how if a customer is mad and they're yelling at you and they're like, oh my gosh, you're unprofessional, you're terrible, blah, blah, blah. They are in the angry boat. And if you want to diffuse the situation and handle the situation well, you need to kick the customer out of the angry boat and you need to get in the angry boat. But don't get in there to get angry at them, get in there to get angry at yourself and to kind of pile on to what the customer was saying. And so for example, last year I think it was, or some time ago, we had an event that, I don't know, it was like in a greenhouse or somewhere insanely humid, like just crazy humid. And we did a bunch of different things for this client and everything looked great. But we had these 3-foot helium balloons that the client wanted their logo on. Now, when we do logo balloons, we have, a vinyl professional that cuts everything out and cuts the logo out and all that stuff. Looks really nice, professional. Then we apply it onto the balloon on the job site. And that keeps the logo fresh, keeps the balloon from popping during transit and, us not having a logo to replace it with and all that stuff. So we're at this venue and we're applying these logos. And it is so freaking humid in the venue that the logos are falling off. And so, they stayed on fine while we were there, but during the client's event, like a letter would fall off here or there, or part of the shape would start peeling off. And the client called us after, and they were upset. And they're like, this is totally unprofessional, we can't believe this. Now, keep in mind that everything else about the event went great. Like all the other things that we built, all the other facets were awesome. But the client was so mad about these logos, right? They're in the angry boat about the logos. Like, this is unprofessional, like this is ridiculous, we shouldn't have done this, right? Now, our team could have gotten defensive, because the reality is that there's so many unpredictable things with balloons. Like, weather affects balloons in the weirdest ways. Like, you can have tons of humidity and room temperature. It's way different than tons of humidity and it's cold versus tons of humidity and it's hot. Like, it's so weird in a way. Like, you kind of have to be scientists to even figure out this stuff. But we could have defended ourselves. We could have been like, well, like this is what the contract says and all that. But instead, what we chose to do is get in the angry boat. So we're like, all right, client, get your ass out of here. It's our turn to get mad. And so we handled it something like, you know what? You're right. This is completely unprofessional. Like, these logos falling off was probably one of our biggest mess ups of the entire year. And we are so disgusted that this happened to you. And frankly, I understand why you're upset. And I'm upset at my team for having this happen. I promise you that I'm going to make sure that every person on my team, every artist that works for Balloon Artisan is going to know that this can never happen again. Well, all of a sudden the client's like, whoa, 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 like, dude, calm down. Like, it's just it's like a sticker falling off a balloon. It's not that big of a deal, right? And so it's really interesting because when you hop in the angry boat for the customer, one, they feel validated and that their concerns are legitimate, but also a lot of times they'll backpedal like, well, it wasn't really that big of a deal. And then, we just kind of keep piling it on. Like, no, it is a big deal. Like, we're going to refund you. How much would you like to be refunded? And they might be like, how about like $100? Like, great, done. What if we do 150? Because I'm really mad at this. And next thing you know, this client, like their reservation or their dissatisfaction has been completely resolved. And now they're more committed to your brand because of how you handled things. And so, yeah, at the end of the day, if we have all these cool balloon installations. We have arches, and we have columns, we have entryways and garlands, and we have like 5 helium balloons and maybe a sticker falls off 1 or 2 of them. Is it really that big of a deal? Not really, but to the client, it's a big deal. And so to us, it's a big deal. So there's only one person allowed in the angry boat. Don't let the client be in the angry boat. You get in the angry boat and you'll find that you can help the client calm down and see things from a clearer perspective, and you'll get the results that you're looking for. Now let's talk about the preventative renegotiation strategies so you can prevent problems from ever happening to begin with. This is going to be the most important section that we talk about. If you've ever heard of the old adage, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, that is so true, and the further I get in my business career, the more I realize how wise that adage actually is. But these are going to be extremely important because they're going to protect you and your business and your client and guide that relationship. The first thing I want to talk about is having really good agreements in place or contracts. Now, don't call them contracts because it sounds kind of cold and legal and nobody likes that, right? Especially in the event space. Call them client agreements. It's a lot more approachable, a lot more friendly. When it comes to renegotiation, your client agreement is going to be your best friend because your client agreement should pretty clearly lay out how things will be handled if changes need to be made after the agreement is finalized. And so you're like, hey, if you want to add more deliverables, this is how we handle this. Or, if you tell us to be here at this time and our team's not able to set up, this is how we handle that. The main thing is they need to know that if there's a change in scope or a change of the project in any way, that there's going to be extra costs incurred by them. And that's fair and that's reasonable. The main thing is you want to make sure that you're not being sneaky in your agreement. Be upfront, be clear, and be candid. I strongly recommend working with an attorney to create your client agreements. Don't just use ChatGPT or whatever, or if you do, at least have an attorney review it. But give them the instructions when they're creating this agreement for you to make things friendly and approachable while still being legally accurate. You don't have to make this thing like chloroform or like full of legalese, right? Nobody likes reading that. So your client agreements are going to be living, breathing documents. They're going to change as you get better at business and more experienced in the event world, and you see things that you never saw coming before, and you don't want to relive that experience. That's bad. Let's put that in the contract, right? So you're going to want to add to these and take things away and clarify and all that stuff to make sure it's a really solid agreement that clearly outlines your relationship with the client. Now, when it comes to adding things to your agreement, this is kind of the rule of thumb I give. A lot of times I'll see people that they get burned and they're like, whoa, I'm never getting burned in that way again. And so they go and they add that thing to the agreement. And then, some time goes along and they get burned again. They're like, I'm never getting burned that way again. So they add something else to the agreement. And then they add something else. And then they add something else. Next thing they know, it's 12 pages long and no one will sign it because they're like, wow, this person's like a litigious asshole. Like, I don't want to work with this person. I don't trust them. And I don't know what's in here, so I'm not going to sign it, right? So you don't want to add every single thing to the agreement. The question I ask myself before we modify Balloon Artisan's agreement is this a one-time thing, or is this something that I can reasonably see happening fairly regularly, right? You want to write your agreement for the 95% of time and then handle the 5% of time on a case-by-case basis and using renegotiation and all that good stuff, right? Make sure that you're not ending up with a 12-page contract that no one will sign, because I promise you that will kill your close ratios as a business, right? If you're trying to grow your business as an event professional, nobody's going to want to work with you if you have these massive contracts. So keep them friendly, keep them concise, yet keep them clear and communicative so the client knows how certain things are going to be handled. Make sure that your agreements have clearly outlined policies. So you don't need to have every single thing in there, but some main ones should be like your cancellation policies and refund policies and rescheduling fees or anything like that. Any sort of policy that you anticipate happening a lot should be outlined in the agreement. Moving on, don't take money from a client prematurely. And what I mean by that is don't take money until you've agreed on what you're going to be providing for them. Because if you take money up front and then you're like, we'll figure the rest out later, and then they start throwing in changes in there and they want, scope creep starts to happen, all that stuff, it gets really complicated. Unfortunately, we're dealing with this on our team right now. We have a client we've worked with for several years. It's a charity and they hire us to decorate this big convention center for them, and we really believe in the cause. And so they reached out to us again this year and they're like, hey, can you work with us? And I'm like, yeah. And not only can we work with you, but we'll honor the same price we've given you for the last 2 years, even though our costs have gone up a lot in that time due to inflation. And so we told them, yeah, we'll do the same price as last year, provided that we can set up same time the day before. We have all the time to set up, all that stuff. And the client said, yeah, that works great. And so I'm like, okay, cool. A week later, the client came to us and said, actually, you have to set up at 6 a.m. instead of the day before. I'm like, well, that complicates things because first off, now instead of having 12 hours to set up, now you're giving us 2 hours to set up. So now we need probably 5 more people to set this thing up. And now we don't have the luxury of hiding in some back room and building things. We have to build it offsite and bring in box trucks. Now our team's leaving the freaking warehouse at 5 a.m. instead of, showing up at noon or whatever. Now we have to wake up at 5 a.m. We have to go there. We have to, pay all these parking fees, and we have to figure out where the heck we're going to put a box truck for a couple hours. Like, it's so much more complicated now. So then we have to go back to them and renegotiate things. And they feel a little, tricked because we told them we'd honor the price. But also, we took money, we took an agreement before everything was finalized. Then they tried to change the scope, right? Now, we're taking care of the client, we're working everything out, so it's all going to be fine. But that was a really unfortunate thing that happened. So always make sure that you're not taking money until everything's been agreed upon and you know exactly what needs to happen. Next, don't trap yourself. Don't box yourself in a corner by making really grandiose promises that you can't fulfill. I mean, if you can fulfill them, great, make the promises. But if you can't fulfill them, don't make the promises. Make sure you're setting expectations reasonably. Don't claim that you're the best at whatever if you're not. Make sure that the client is getting what they paid for. Because problems happen when you say, I'm the best, I give the best service, I give the best experience, I give the best quality, and then it takes you a day to get back to your emails. They're like, whoa, dude, you said you were the best. This isn't what the best looks like. And so make sure that you're being very clear and honest to not put yourself in a bad situation further down the road. So this one may or may not apply to you, but at Balloon Artisan, we do not itemize invoices. Now, of course, we say, okay, this is the deliverable you're getting, this is the colors, this is more or less what it will look like, and this is where we're putting it and all that stuff. But we're not breaking out, okay, so we have 3 people showing up, and then, it's a 5 a.m. setup, so we have this charge in there, and then blah, blah, blah. When we create a proposal for our clients, we have a pricing calculator that we use, took us years to make the darn thing. It's a piece of software, and we put in all the variables, a bunch of yes, no stuff, and it goes and spits out a really nice, clean price. We give that to the client. We're like, this is what it costs to give what you're wanting to do. And so if we were to itemize that, first off, it'd be like a 4-page long invoice, and it'd just be ridiculous. And then it'd take us 2 hours to create it. So we then have to add 2 hours to make your ridiculous invoice into the project price and itemize that as well. It'd just be crazy. But we found that when we used to itemize our invoices, which we did do for a while, we found that we got the most nitpicky requests and the most nitpicky changes and things like that. And then it was really frustrating because it's like, okay, the invoice said we'd have 3 people, but we actually, had more time than we thought. So we only brought 2. And the clients were like, oh, well, there's not 3 people, so I want to be refunded. It's like, no, this is just ridiculous. There's been times where people were like, wait a second, I wanted a black, white, red arch. And you said it'd be like $1,100. If I did black, white, and silver, would it be less? It's like, no, it'd be $1,100. What if I just did black and white? It'd be $1,100. Like, come on, man. Do you want the arch or do you not want the arch? Let's go. So we just found that itemizing invoices was a huge pain. And then when it comes to renegotiation, it's opening yourself up to this huge can of worms, right? There's so many things that can happen. Like, oh, what if you say that, you have to rent a 20-foot box truck and you show up with a 15-foot box truck? Do you owe the client a refund? It just gets absolutely crazy. So we stay away from itemized invoices. But when someone does ask for an itemized invoice, there's usually a reason why. So what we do is we will ask them questions to clarify why they're wanting the itemized invoice. Because we're not going to give them one, but usually there's something they're trying to accomplish. So the boss wants to know why, the balloon arch is $1,100, and they don't understand that it takes 3 hours of planning and 4 hours of driving, and it takes this, and it takes materials, and takes shipping costs, it takes all this, right? That's usually what they're looking for. And so you can just clarify that with them, and usually that's good to go. Or sometimes they have a specific budget. So, if it's like a bigger event, they're like, hey, we have $10,000 to spend on balloons, but they haven't communicated that to my team because they think they'll be able to negotiate a better deal if they keep their budget hidden. Very common tactic in the event space. And so we go and we give them a quote. It's like $12,000 or whatever. And they're like, okay, this is $2,000 over budget. So we want to itemize everything so we can figure out what we want to cut out. So we can ask questions. We can figure that out. And then once the client tells us, well, really we're trying to get down to 10,000, it's like, great, would you like our suggestion on what we could do for 10,000 that would give the biggest bang for your buck? Which usually they're like, yeah, let's see what you can do, right? So if someone asks for this, it usually means there's something else going on behind the scenes that you need to figure out. Speaking of invoices, I want to share a pro tip with you that's been one of the most helpful things for Balloon Artisan. So we only take full payment before an event. If a client doesn't pay in full, we don't finalize the agreement and we don't work with them. We used to do 50-50 for a lot of years, and it was a massive headache. For starters, it doubled the amount of bookkeeping that we did, right? So we did 1,008 events last year. If we had to do 2016 invoices, that's more line items, that's paying the CPA more, it just gets more complicated. So we only take full payment up front. Also, we found that we use an incredible amount of time chasing our clients after the projects. Like, hey, you still haven't paid this invoice. Like, I'll get around to it. Or, sometimes we'd have clients who are like, oh yeah, well, this has to go through the accounts payable process and it's going to be net 90. And we're like, dude, like, you didn't tell me you guys would take 90 days after the event to pay us. And so a lot of problems that we completely eliminated by saying we take payment in full. So we have not lost a client since we made that change, but we do have quite a few clients that will ask us, hey, why are you requiring 100% upfront when nobody else does? And we're just like, hey, listen, it's easier for you. It's less bookkeeping. I think the real concern that most people have is that we're going to screw them over and run away and take all their money. Does that resonate with you? And they're like, yeah, that's what I'm worried about. It's like, okay, well, we've been in business for 13 years. Our website's pretty dope. We got a massive portfolio, thousands and thousands of clients, lots of corporate clients and private clients and celebrities and all that stuff. Like, we've been around for a while. Like, we are a legit company. Now, let's just say, for example, that we were the most elaborate con of all time, which creating a con that elaborate in the balloon space is kind of silly, but let's just say that we did, and we took your money and we no-showed and all that stuff. Well, what you do is you call your bank or your credit card and you say, hey, this is fraudulent, and they would immediately pull the money from the Balloon Artisan bank account and give it back to you. The banks and credit cards are very much pro-consumer if there's ever a dispute as to whether things are legit or not. So we'll talk about that more in a little bit. The last preventative renegotiation measure that we're going to talk about is setting clear expectations with your client. Now, you should let a client know this is what you can expect to happen when you work with us. This is how the process is going to go. And this is what the results are going to look like. And if they don't look like this, this is how things are going to be handled. This is how we're going to make things right. Because when you set clear expectations, you put their mind at ease. And even if something does come up, you just let them know, hey, this is part of the process. We got systems in place to handle this. We're going to take care of you. Don't worry. I got your back. And as you're explaining these things, make sure that you're documenting as you go, right? So, if you have a phone call, just send an email summary. Hey, so great hopping on that call with you. Just to summarize, we talk about this, this, and this, and I let you know that if this happens, then we'll do this, or if we don't do this, then this will happen, whatever. Make sure that there's a paper trail, and that way, digital paper trail, and that way if you ever have to refer back to previous communications, you have it there, and it's not like a he said, she said situation, right? That's going to be very valuable when it comes to renegotiating, because what's going to happen is your client is probably working with a bunch of vendors, dozens. They've got their event venue, they got their day jobs, they got their family, like there's just so much going on in their lives. They're inevitably going to forget something that you told them. And if it's just a he said, she said, she's like, well, you never told me that, or he said, I didn't, I don't remember you saying that or whatever. And it's going to be kind of a pain. So always set clear expectations and then document. At Balloon Artisan, one thing that we implemented into our client agreement after it blowing up on us quite a few times was that we now have a paragraph in there saying, hey, balloon art is an artistic endeavor. And while we might show you pictures of past projects, or we might talk about colors or shapes or whatever, like the exact outcome might differ a little bit from what the pictures look like, right? I mean, we had clients before that they'd send us an inspo picture, and then the inspo picture had a pink balloon here and a white one here and like a gold balloon here, and then ours had like a gold balloon here and a white one here and a pink one here. And the client would like get upset. It's like, dude, like these are literally balloons blown up to random sizes fit together in a puzzle. I can't perfectly replicate everything they did. And then the client's like, well, I want a refund because I wanted this inspiration image. And because I didn't have this in my client agreement, we're kind of at a weird impasse where it's like, well, it's kind of not like the inspo image, but it's also like reasonably close to it. And it looks really good. And the guests love it. And even the client said it looked good. It just wasn't exactly like the picture, right? So we have a paragraph in our agreement that just says, hey, this is art. The actual outcome may not be the same as our renderings or the inspiration images. And that's been really helpful. Reactive renegotiation strategies or tactics. For when things start to change on you mid-project and you're like, ooh, things might get nasty if we don't regain control. So reactive, something happens and you're responding to it. So we have these three buckets here. We have things that happen before the event that kind of go wrong, things that happen during the event that kind of go wrong, and the client not being satisfied with the outcome. So either after the event or they just don't like how things turned out. These are kind of the three buckets that we lump everything into. And remember, by doing a really good job by taking preemptive measures, you're going to really spare yourself from having to renegotiate later on in the project. And hopefully you're not going to have to worry about this a whole lot. For any issues that we have that take place before the project, the first thing we do is we review our client communications and we review our internal notes as a team before we address the client. We're trying to get a clear picture of what happened and where things went wrong and where things need to go from here. Then what we'll do is we'll try to get the client on the phone. We always try to get on the phone because it's a lot more personable. It's easier for us to understand tonality and communicate like, hey, we're sincerely sorry this happened, or we're here to help you out. Also, I find when you email people, they just gloss through it real quick and they miss half the stuff you say anyways, which is a problem of mine. I'm a very long-winded person, which is why this podcast is like forever long. But I like to be very detailed and provide as much value as I can to people. And so phone calls have just always worked better for me and for my team and our style. So what we do is we get on the phone, we ask good clarification questions like, hey, when we said this, like, how did you interpret it? Or when you said this, like, what did you mean? Did you mean this thing, right? How are we going to bring us back on the same page so we can understand where things need to go from here? By taking the time to do that, you're going to find that the client will really gain respect for you. And whenever this happens with us, inevitably it happens to everybody, but whenever it happens with us, the client's usually like, hey, thanks so much for taking the time to call and get us back on the same page. We appreciate it. We're excited for the project. Really grateful for all that you've done for us, all that kind of stuff, right? And that really makes things a lot simpler in terms of making sure things never get out of control. If things ever start getting a little heated or a little too tense, I try to de-escalate the situation. One of my favorite tools for doing that is by using humor. I have a pretty dry sense of humor, so I find that works pretty well for this purpose. One of my favorite lines, you can feel free to use this, is if I mess up or if the client's upset us, I'll be like, hey, I'm on your team. Like, I'm here for you. I want to make sure this is awesome. But tell you what, if I mess up, I'll let you dislocate my left elbow. And if I really, really mess up and I'm not able to turn this around, I'll even let you dislocate my right elbow too. And to make things even better, we can go to a zoo and I'll let you feed me to the lions in the cage, or ship me off to Africa and I'll go get eaten by alligators or something like that, right? It's kind of a stupid thing to say, and it's so ridiculous and so dry that people are usually like, okay, yeah, no, you're good, man. Thanks for all you do. Thanks for the understanding. Let's just get this thing back on track. Yeah, that price sounds fine. Or hey, I'm just a little upset. You want an extra $2,000, $500, $30, whatever it is. But if that's what it needs to be, that's what it needs to be. And so de-escalating the situation through whatever means you prefer, once again, I like humor, is very important. So as luck would have it, since I recorded this episode of the podcast a day or two ago, we had a situation on the team where one of our artists was setting up for a baby shower at the client's home, and she was doing an installation on the front porch. And at one point, the client had this wooden bench on the front porch, and at one point the artist needed to sit down to tie some knots or something like that. She sat down and she heard the bench crack, so she jumped up immediately, looked at the bench, seemed okay to her, and it turns out that the bench actually broke. And so she didn't realize that it had broken. She thought things were okay. She just thought, the wood was creaking or whatever. She made the install. The client loved it and everything. And then she left, and the client actually let us know the next day, hey, you guys broke my bench. And we looked at the security video camera footage, and yes, clearly you guys broke it. So I reached out to my artist. I'm like, hey, you didn't say you broke the bench, right? And the artist said, oh my gosh, I didn't realize it broke. I just thought it made a creaking noise. I got up right away. I was like, no worries. So I reached out to the client, and using the things that I talk about in this podcast, followed it pretty much verbatim. One of the things I did is I used humor in this situation, because honestly, I'd be really upset if someone broke my bench. I'd be really pissed off. And this client was very, very reasonable about everything. They're understandably upset, as they should have been, but they're very pleasant to work with and everything. But still, I used humor to diffuse the situation. And so I wanted to include just a segment of that client call so you can see exactly how I use humor. And you can tell that this is not a very polished call. I'm stuttering a little bit. I'm stammering. There's kind of some awkward pauses in there. Now there's pauses because I clipped the audio as well. But it's not the world's greatest call, but by sincerely showing that, yes, I'm sorry, we want to make it right. We've got your back. And then integrating that humor in there, the situation was completely diffused. And the end result was, at the end, she thanked me and she's like, thank you so much. This is the best I've ever been treated by any company. You've gone above and beyond and done something that I've never seen from a company before, which meant a lot to me and to my team. And I think we'll be working with them again. So I took a bad situation and turned it into a good situation through using kind of these reactive strategies. And while it wasn't a negotiation, so to speak, this is an example of how I'd use humor to diffuse the situation. So enjoy. Awesome. That's good to hear. Well, we'll send you off to the savannas of Africa to get eaten by lions, but we'll let Ellie stay around for now.
God, no. definitely just talk to my husband and chat with him about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And we want to make it right. If we need to, your husband can dislocate some of our elbows as well, just to really make sure that things are
No.
fair. It's only fair. We break your bench, you can break our arm. Like I'm
Oh,
totally down
okay.
with that. So
No, we're fine. Well, I really appreciate you, trying to make this right and chatting with me. Sorry I was a little unavailable yesterday, but
you
I
were
really
totally
appreciate
good.
you. Yeah, I really appreciate you reaching out. That's the most above and beyond that I've ever had a company do. So I really, really appreciate that.
Now, our team does a really good job of documenting everything anyways, even if the situation's normal and the client's happy and loving us. We always love having very thorough notes, and we're very detailed in our responses and communications and all that. And our internal systems for that are just insane. Best in the industry, I promise. They're really good. But if you ever get in a situation where you're like, okay, like I reviewed the situation, I tried to clarify, it didn't work, I tried to de-escalate, it didn't work, you're going to want to make sure that you document everything from here on out, right? Because you're preparing for a shit hits the fan scenario, which hopefully we can prevent from happening. But if it does, you want to be prepared. You don't want to be scrambling and trying to find evidence to support your side of the argument. What I would do is, if we can't de-escalate the situation, I'll be like, hey, are you cool if we just kind of keep things on email from here on out? If that works for you, right? No phone calls or whatever, we'll just keep things an email. That way there's no room for misinterpretation or misunderstanding. It's all there in black and white, and we can talk about it and ask any questions. Pretty much every reasonable person's gonna be like, yeah, that's a good solution. So make sure to document things, take screenshots, take pictures, anything that you need. Then the last reactive renegotiation strategy is to execute, or to actually do the things that you told the client you said you were going to do, right? So if you say, hey, I'll make sure that we have this balloon arch here by this date, this time, or this lighting, or this whatever, we're going to swap this out for that. Make sure you actually do that. Because if you tell them you'll do it and you don't do it, you're going to have a problem on your hands. So there's some good guidance for what happens when things go wrong before the event, or when they start to get off track a little bit. This is what you should do to get them back on track so you don't end up with a shit hits the fan scenario and with a mess on your hands. Now, sometimes a lot of the things I talked about are like if the client's unhappy with you, but there's going to be times where you're unhappy with the client and you need to renegotiate things from that standpoint too. So for example, I told you about the mega yacht where the yacht owner's like, be here at noon or whatever time it was. It was like 9 a.m. or something. Be here at 9 a.m. And then the tide was low, the boat was clear out in the ocean, and they're like, we can't get in yet. And so we just sat there. And the yacht owner didn't want to pay us for that, or whoever rented the yacht or whatever it was. The client didn't want to pay us for that time. We're like, hey, listen, like, we had other projects. Like, we had to pull people out of the office to go sit in on the other projects because our people were on the dock with your balloons waiting for 6 hours. Like, we have to pay our people, and our people deserve to be treated fairly. And we did a good job for you. And you said you loved the balloons, right? And so we come to the client and we're the ones with the issue. Now, we're going to follow these same steps. We're going to review the communication. We're going to make sure we have a paper trail and a documentation. We're going to clarify things like, hey, when you say be there at 9, that's not be there at 9 so you can set up at 3 o'clock. That's be there at 9 because you can set up at 9. And so we would have quoted things differently. Does that make sense? If we knew we had to be there on standby for 6 hours, we probably would have doubled or tripled the price of the project to account for the idle time and the fact that our artists couldn't be on other projects, and we had to shift some things around with other clients, which wasn't fair to them and all that stuff, right? So we clarify things. Usually by that point, they're going to be a lot more understanding, and they're like, yeah, like, I'm sorry, that was kind of a bad thing for me to do. Happy to pay the difference, whatever it is, right? In this case, that's how the situation turned out. You can de-escalate, you can make jokes, all that stuff. Make sure to document everything. If this is happening over a phone call, send them an email just summarizing what we talked about. Hey, so happy that we could jump on a call and clarify things. Thank you for being so understanding of being willing to pay the extra $1,000 for our team being out there for 6 hours waiting for the boat. Man, we just loved how the project turned out. It was great, right? Once again, you're on the same team. You want to build that rapport, keep things friendly so you don't poke the bear and escalate the situation unnecessarily. It's now time to talk about what happens and what you should do if a situation comes up during the event, the scope changes, timelines change, whatever, and you now need to renegotiate during the event when things are happening. There's an amazing book called Never Split the Difference. It's really, really good. I've read it at least 8 times. It's made me lots of money, changed my life. Really good book. It's written by a guy named Chris Voss, who used to be the lead hostage negotiator for the FBI. And so when someone was kidnapped or whatever, Chris would come in and he'd negotiate with the kidnappers and all that stuff. And in there, he talks about this concept of leverage. And leverage simply means who has the upper hand in a bargaining situation. So if you think about it here, we have a expertly drawn seesaw or teeter-totter or whatever, and you have kind of it's called the fulcrum, so like the middle point of the seesaw. Now, depending on where you move this fulcrum, it will depend, or it will change who has the most leverage. So who gets the most outputs out of the most input. So I actually kind of drew this backwards because this guy would probably be on the ground and this guy would be clear up in the air because this guy has a lot more leverage, downward leverage, forcing this guy upwards. Unsolicited physics lesson. But the important thing to understand about leverage is this fulcrum will shift depending on where you're at in the event cycle. So before the event, the client usually has the most leverage. The client, they can shop other providers, they can add or subtract deliverables, they can be a total pain in the ass if they want to, they can string you along for a long time, then ghost you. Like, they have a lot of leverage and a lot of things they can do. Now, the interesting thing about during the event is you actually have the most leverage because it's showtime. The guests are coming, the event's starting, the executives are there, the bride's there, the groom's there, maid of honor, whatever it is that you're doing, the people are there. Things are happening real time. And so this means that if the client wants changes made, you hold the cards in this situation. You have all the leverage in this case. This is especially true if you take payment up front like Balloon Artisan does, right? If you only do 50-50, the client can always be a complete asshole and be like, well, you know what? I want these balloons changed from red balloons to orange balloons or whatever. I want this lighting set up or more LED panels or whatever. And if you don't do that, I'm just not going to pay the second half of the invoice. Like, they can do that and they can be a dick. And then you're going to be on the hook for how do you handle that situation? Like, do you want to risk that? Do you want to fight him in court? Like, it's just a mess, right? So by taking payment up front, you really stack the leverage in your favor during the event. Now, I cannot emphasize this enough. I'm not saying to exploit your client. I'm not saying to take advantage of them or their misfortune or the situation. I'm not saying that you should nickel and dime them. And I'm also not saying that you should just leave them high and dry and be like, well, we did what we promised. We're out of here. Peace out, right? Our team at Balloon Artisan, we will move mountains to take care of our clients and to make their change requests happen if we can possibly do so, right? So there's one time we're working on an event. We're supposed to finish everything by 10 p.m. The event was the next day. And at 10 p.m., the client said, hey, we have a problem. We didn't realize that this ugly audio-visual mess next to the stage would be an ugly audio-visual mess. We thought there'd be a way to hide it or whatever, or pipe and drape or something like that, but it's really visible. Like, what can we do, right? And so they're like, can you do anything to cover this crap up? I'm like, absolutely, we can. The problem is that it's 10 o'clock, we've been working for 12 hours, we're really tired. It'll probably take us an extra 5 hours to do it. So me and my team are gonna have to be there for an extra 5 hours working on this thing. Now we can do it, but we need to be compensated for that. I'm like, yeah, totally understand. Like, okay, cool. And so, I talked to my team and we pull out the calculator, figured out what it'll cost. Like, okay, it's gonna be X dollars, which was a pretty big amount. Like, we don't like working 17-hour shifts or whatever the heck it ended up being, right? And so the client's like, okay, that's fine. And they approved it. I said, okay, let me send you an invoice right now. We sent it, they paid it, and then my team did it. The reason I did that is because I was in the position where I had the most leverage. If I would have said, hey, yep, you got it, no problem, we'll do it, and then we work on it and we build it, and then after the event's over, we tell the client, hey, this is the amount that we need to charge you for that, and the client's like, actually, we can't pay you that because it wasn't approved. And maybe we can pay you like half that or a third of that, or maybe we can't pay you anything. Sorry for this, there's no more money in the bank, that's it. Thanks for your extra work though, we'll use you on the next event and make it up to you, right? That really sucks. You don't want to be in that situation. So you want to use your leverage while you have it to make sure that you're taking care of your client, but that you're also being treated fairly. In this case, like I said, I sent that invoice while on site. I made them pay it right there, pull out the corporate Amex and pay it. That way I knew that we're going to be taken care of. Now, sometimes you don't necessarily have that amount of time. Maybe the client's busy or the event's starting soon or whatever, right? And you don't have the ability to do that, or maybe they just don't have an Amex. In this example I just gave, it worked out great where there was time. I could send an invoice over, the client could pay it on the spot, they had a credit card or whatever. Sometimes that won't necessarily be so smooth. Sometimes they won't have the authorization or they won't have a credit card or they need to talk to somebody or whatever. So what you should do in that situation, or if time's a little more limited, is you should talk to them. You should, once again, use your leverage kindly. You should clarify, so this is what needs to happen, this is what it's going to cost, and then you need to document that. So just tell them, hey, I'm going to send you an email real quick summarizing what we talked about just barely. That way, we have a record of it and things don't get forgotten or lost or whatever. And then I just need you to reply, changes approved, budget approved, let's do it, and then we'll make it happen, right? So that way you don't necessarily need the money right on the spot. You're not like, pay up now or else. But at least now you have documentation that yes, they need to pay and that everything's going to be taken care of. So in addition to documenting the payment terms and the new agreed upon amount that you're asking for the client, you're also going to want to take pictures, screenshots, whatever is applicable to make sure that you have proof that you did what you said you did in case there's any issues with like accounting or anything like that. So you want to make sure you have a really clean trail, that you're maximizing your leverage, and that you're going to get paid fairly for whatever changes your client's requesting. And then of course, the last thing you need is approval from the decision maker or I guess whoever's overseeing the project or this part of the project with you. Written approval is always better, but sometimes verbal approval is fine depending on what you're doing. But it's nice to have them sign something as well or send you a text that says, yep, everything's good to go. That way you have that paper trail. All right, the moment you've been waiting for, I know, the dreaded shit hits the fan situation. This is where everything's gone sideways. Cooperation is off the table. You've tried all the things we talked about before, and it's just not working. This client is unwilling to work with you, and you know that you're in for a disaster. This is how you handle that. I will admit, I've only been in a handful of these situations in my 13 years as an event professional and the thousands of events that I've been involved with. I find that most people are pretty reasonable, and even though emotions can get high during events, as long as you follow the strategies of the core principles of renegotiation and you're doing a great job preventively to make sure none of these issues are happening, and when they do come up, you react to them very quickly and in an appropriate manner so you can keep them from escalating, I find that you really won't have to deal with this a whole lot. Now, a quick note, if things go like atomic shit hits the fan scenario, like super bad, there's threats being made, people are screaming, and you fear for your safety, remove yourself from the situation physically. Or, if it's on the phone or whatever, like hang up. Whatever you have to do, protect yourself. And then I would recommend calling law enforcement or security or whatever and working with them to de-escalate the situation and to find a solution. Now, I didn't think this was necessary to bring up, but last month, I think it was, a very close friend of mine actually had to call the police to de-escalate a situation with one of her clients, and it was a big mess. And so I wanted to point that out there. If things get really bad, don't try to handle it yourself. So that's the absolute worst case scenario. Now let's talk about a more like moderate shit hits the fan situation. So things are really, really bad, but like you're not afraid of like dying or anything like that. So the first thing you need to do is assess the situation. How did things get to this point? Who's responsible, and where did the breakdown happen? The next thing you need to do is determine possible solutions and then weigh all of those outcomes. Sometimes it's just better to walk away from a bad situation rather than dragging yourself into a nightmare that's going to hijack your time for the next days, weeks, months, or however long. Don't let yourself get in that situation. I heard a quote once, don't let a mistake burn you twice. So the client already screwed you over. Things already got bad. You're already at a loss for this. Don't let them burn you over and over and over again for however long it's going to take for you to recover from this emotionally and to get over it, right? Don't let them burn you twice. If things really go bad, make sure to keep all communication in writing. And if you can't keep it in writing, you're face-to-face with the client at the event, then record the conversation. Now make sure you're aware of what your state's laws are on recording conversations. Like you might have to disclose like, hey, I'm recording this. And even if you don't, it might be a good idea to just be like, hey, I feel like things are getting a little tense. Like I don't want that, but are you okay if we record this? And that way, when things simmer down a little bit, like we can go back and we can re-listen to it and we can remember what was said and what was agreed upon or whatever, right? You might find that just the act of recording things will de-escalate the situation, but it's really good to have that record there. Make sure you keep really good records of all the communication and document. Take screenshots, take pictures, take videos, anything that you can possibly do to prove that you've done the work and that you held up to your end of the client agreement. That will really be important if things get really, really bad and you need to go to court or anything like that. I highly recommend having the client sign some form of approval, whether it's electronic or physical, saying that yes, I know these are the results, this is what I'm getting, and I'm satisfied with these results. If they're sour and they don't want to sign something, you can always give them the option of saying, hey, if you're cool, I can just take everything down, clean it up, and we can go our separate ways. Once again, it's better to walk away at a loss rather than drag yourself into a nightmare of a situation that will eat away at you for days, weeks, or months, right? Don't get involved in stuff like that. It's not worth it. And remember, you need to know your leverage points. Before the event, you'll have some leverage. During the event, you'll have the most leverage you'll ever have in the situation. After the event, you'll have almost no leverage at all. And it's very difficult to rectify a situation or to take care of a shit hits the fan scenario if you have no leverage. So make sure that you're getting things under control when you have the leverage in your favor and the cards are in your hand. Let's talk about CYA, covering your ass. If your client decides to file a payment dispute with their bank or their credit card company, also known as a chargeback, it's going to be kind of a pain in the rear. Unfortunately, the bank or credit card company is going to side with them off the get-go. So what's going to happen? The client will reach out like, hey, I never paid for this, or this is fraudulent, or they didn't deliver what they said they'd deliver, and I'm not paying this. The company's actually going to take the money from your bank account. They're going to reverse that transaction, and this sucks. You'll then be notified that the client has done this, and then you'll be given a path to dispute this action. It's kind of unfortunate, but this is why you want to make sure you're documenting everything. All the communications, all the invoices, pictures of the finalized deliverables, time that you spend, any possible thing, receipts for parking, whatever you have to support that, yes, you were here, you delivered this was the client agreement. You need to make sure you have your agreement, as we talked about in the preventative renegotiation measures. You need to make sure that that's solid, that that's in place, and that the client actually signed it or agreed to it somehow. If they didn't agree to it, it's not enough. So you need to have them explicitly opting in by paying an invoice or clicking a button or signing it physically or whatever you want to do. If you have enough evidence, eventually, yes, the charge will be reinstated and you will get your money back, but this can take weeks, sometimes I think even over a month. So it can be a real big hassle, but make sure everything is documented, right? Cover your ass. Another thing I want to bring up, you do not have to tolerate abuse from a client. It's okay to walk away from a client, even mid-conversation. It's okay to hang up on them. It's okay to get the authorities involved or security involved. And if you're with a client and things are getting heated, you might want to just invite some bystanders. Hey, can you come be part of this conversation? Can you come witness this conversation? You'll find that a lot of times that will put the client in check and that will de-escalate things and allow you to continue the discussion about the renegotiation or changing payment or whatever it is that you need to rediscuss. You can do that a lot more amicably in the presence of other people. And the most important thing that I can share with you when it comes to dealing with shit hits the fan scenarios is to remember that it's actually not that big of a deal. Right now, it sucks. It's going to be emotionally painful. You're going to be in fight or flight. You're going to have, your adrenaline's going to be through the roof. You're going to have your ego involved. They're going to have their ego involved, and it's going to suck. But 10 years from now, you probably won't even remember this situation even happening. And you might not, even if you remember it, you probably won't remember most of the details. So put things in perspective. This is really painful now, but it's going to pass. You will get through it. Like, you're not going to wreck your life financially from this. You'll be able to recover. You'll figure stuff out. You'll find better clients. There's always a tomorrow, right? So keep that in perspective. I know it's a lot easier said than done, but just do your best to not let the situation get to you. A lot of times when people are, assholes and they're rude, it has more to do with them and their beliefs of themselves and how they feel about their world rather than you personally. So just try to keep that in perspective. Whew, we have covered a lot of information, a lot of good strategies, a lot of good tactics. So I want to give you a quick summary. The first thing I want to point out, remember that an ounce of prevention is worth more than a pound of cure. It's way better to get ahead of things by having really good preventative renegotiation strategies, have your good agreements, and all those things we talked about. Do a great job on that, and you'll find that most things never get past that stage at all. Remember, you and your client are almost always on the same team. You both want the event to be awesome. You want the guests to have an amazing time. You want everything to look professional and quality and great. You want to be respected and treated with dignity throughout the process. You're on the same team. You have the same shared goals. Address any issues that come up early and openly. Reassure the client that you care about them, that you want everything to go great, and that you're in their corner. You want to find a solution that works for everybody. If you ever need to amend your original client agreement or the scope of work, try to communicate openly. Let the client know why things need to be changed. Get their insights on, if that sounds reasonable or not. Tell them, hey, this will be the cost or this will be the new terms, and then ask them if that sounds fair. If you need to renegotiate or amend your original client agreement, talk to the client about it. Let them know, hey, this is why things need to be done this way instead of how we originally planned on it. This is going to be the new cost. And then ask them if that sounds fair and if they have any questions about that. More often than not, they're going to be cool with it. And there you have it. There is your crash course on scope creep survival, how to renegotiate without losing your client or getting exploited in the process. I hope you found this episode of the podcast to be super helpful. Now, I have a huge favor to ask of you. If you know any other entrepreneurs, business owners, or event professionals that you think would love to learn the things we talked about in the podcast, please share this episode with them. When people share the episodes of the podcast, it lets me know that yes, people find this valuable, and it gives me a good indication of what types of content I should focus on creating. And then obviously the things that aren't getting shared, I won't create any more of that. So if you like this stuff, you want to see more of it, share it with a friend. It would mean the world to me. Thank you so much for joining me on this episode of the Event Secrets podcast, where we talk about how to put on better events, take better care of our clients, and make a whole lot more money in the process. And one last thing, if you're on LinkedIn, I'm on LinkedIn as well. I love connecting with other event professionals. My name is Keenan Price. I am the CEO of Balloon Artisan and the host of the Event Secrets podcast. Look me up, send me a connection request, send me a message. I would love to connect with you. I feel like the event space can be kind of lonely sometimes, and so the better our network is and the more we're able to help each other out, the better the industry is for all of us.